Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We are now beginning our ERPS meeting, Employee Relations and Public Safety. I am the chair of the ERPS committee, Commissioner Ladina Bolton of District 7. Also on the committee, we have Commissioners Shakira Johnson and Commissioner Marita Davis Johnson. In addition, we have our presiding officer, Commissioner Michelle Long Spears, joining us, Commissioner Terry, and I believe Commissioner Patrick will be joining us momentarily. We're going to do a bit of moving around in the agenda. We do have some presentations and guests here in support of some of these items, but we're going to go ahead and start with our minutes on page 1, item 2025-1755. Do we have a motion for this item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving down to our new agenda items, beginning with fire rescue, item 2025-1169. All commission districts, invitation number 25-100065, uniforms for fire rescue services, annual contract with 4 options to renew, for use by fire rescue services, consists of the purchase of uniforms for fire rescue personnel, recommended award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidders. This is to NAFECO, NAFECO, and Williams Fire Apparatus, total amount not to exceed $2,580,000.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
It is, as you stated, this is for our uniforms. It's about 268 line items. It includes everything from the uniforms that they wear daily, the boots, belts, all of the patches, the jackets. It's everything other than our turnout gear that is issued to our firefighters and other staff members.
And this is the same company that we have traditionally gone with?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions or comments from committee members? Any questions or comments from commissioners? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion for this item?
I move to approve item 2025-1169.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Next, item 2025-1692. This is also under fire rescue, all commission districts. A memorandum of agreement with Emory University and DeKalb County for critical event preparedness and response. And I see that we do have some, is this alternate language for that item?
Yes, ma'am. That will be a substitute agreement. And there were 2 items that were changed in the one that was in the original packet. One was simply spelling out the actual terms. Under the terms, it now states clearly that it's December 31st, 2030 when this would end. The second item that was changed was the agreement was somewhat silent to the fact that our fire units could still respond to any calls that the Emory units would be responding to. On page 3, closer to the bottom, you'll see where it clearly states that the DeKalb County Fire Rescue has the right to continue to any calls if deemed necessary. So we're just clearly stating that. But overall, this agreement is with the Emory EMS division. These are individuals that are in pre-med, so they have become either EMTs or paramedics. Just so you know, the system is actually already in place. It's my understanding Emory was one of the first in the state to start this type of program. And what they're able to do is respond to calls. They're not in ambulances, but they're able to respond to calls and mitigate those incidents, once again, at the level of either EMT and paramedics. I'll state, too, that during the pandemic, when we were in the vaccination events, having those, we actually had, I believe, somewhere between 30 to 35 of these team members that came and helped us give the COVID shots. But what they would be able to do is, once again, respond to calls on the campus or possibly on the streets around the campus. Adding to our enhancement in EMS. And once again, if they do respond and fire or an ambulance is still needed, those units will still respond. So it's formalizing this process. We'll work with them so that they can receive the calls earlier. Currently, what happens is typically they're being dispatched through Emory's PD, so they're not getting dispatched through our 911 system, but we hope to integrate this closer so that, once again, there will be a more timely response. And in some cases, it will relieve our units from having to respond.
Okay. All righty. Any questions or comments from committee members?
A
Commissioner
comment.
Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It sounds like a really interesting and effective program. Glad that you're bringing this forward to us because it will help the response time on campus, but also help alleviate some of the stress that we have in our system. So again, just happy to see this coming forward.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? No. Related to an item that we approved a couple months back where, and I don't remember exactly what that was called, whenever fire departments from different jurisdictions support each other,
A mutual aid agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Does this include them where we would pay a fee or they would pay a fee if we support them or they support the community?
No, ma'am. There's no cost to this agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. If there are no other questions or comments, do we have a motion for this item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Wonderful. And it looks like we do have another item for fire rescue, item 20251698. All commission districts, change order number 5 to contract number 1377240, Public Safety Communications Technology and Hardware Solutions. This is a Sourcewell contract number 042021-MOT for use by the Departments of Fire Rescue, the Marshal's Office, Police Services, Sanitation, and Roads and Drainage. This contract consists of purchasing through the competitively let Sourcewell contract for the purchase of APX radios, remote speaker microphones, chargers, batteries, and related accessories, device hardware, installation, and programming. This request seeks to increase contract funds awarded to Motorola Solutions, Inc., amount not to exceed $310,000.
Yes, Commissioners, this is to purchase the radios, as was stated. You will see the total is $310,000. Fire Rescue is asking for $150,000 of that to increase it for our use. I believe the marshals may be listed on this as well, but it would be to purchase not only the radios, but all of the items that are needed to put it in the service.
Okay. And my only question is how this is an extension of the contract we approved earlier this year, or increased the funds, excuse me.
Yes, it's to,
Because we
it's-
voted on APX radios and speakers and all of that a couple months back.
yes, this is listed as a change order. So I do know for fire, we have it listed as adding funds for our use. And I believe, I don't have it before me, but the marshal has their own sheet that they provided as well. Let me see, I can see if it's listed here. I think it's listed on this one. I'm not sure if you see that on there.
Yeah, I don't see for the
You don't see
marshal
it on there.
either.
Yeah.
Commissioner, I did look through the agenda item and you are correct. We did come before you in June of this year, and there was a change order request for additional funds, and it did increase the contract term.
Oh, the term.
This request today is a change order, but it's just to add more money and specifically for, is this fire and rescue? And-
Fire, we asked for 150, I
Okay,
think.
there are
Marshals.
some additional user departments that
Yeah.
ask for some additional funding as well.
Okay. All right, thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on page 2 of the agenda item document, there's the breakdown of the 150,000 for fire, 125,000 for the marshal's office, and then also sanitation and roads and drainage. So I guess that together gets us to 310.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
I yield. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see that. Wonderful.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
then roads and drainage is included as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, do we have a motion for this item?
Move to approve item ending in 1698.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we are going to move into police services at this time. Item 2025-1586, all commission districts, change order number 5 to contract number 1241890, false alarm billing and tracking services, City of Brookhaven, contract number 130415, revenue sharing cooperative agreement for use by the Department of Police Services. This contract consists of the management of false alarms in accordance with County Ordinance OCGA 366013. This request seeks to increase the contract funds and term through December 31st, 2026, awarded to Superior LLC, amount not to exceed $200,000.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is actually one of E911 contracts.
Okay.
And Superion is simply the company that we use for shared revenue. They monitor any of the false alarm fees, they track them, and also do any billing services for us for those false alarm fees.
And also with this item earlier this year, I recall we did have, and I don't recall if it was a change order or what it was, but we did discuss the false alarm billing and tracking services. Can you speak to how it's related to this item?
Yes, so I'm sorry, you're saying specifically in reference to, I don't remember which one it was previously, but for Superion, simply that is what they do. They do the billing services, tracking any false alarm fees. So with it being a shared revenue account, for some of the funds come to us, some go to fees, and some go to Superion. So it just depends on how credit card fees we process, that's a fee for that. Any other billing that we utilize, any citizens that have any false alarm fees, any of that billing that goes along with that, any of the monitoring for those alarms, all goes in that Superion contract.
Okay. Ms. Butler, are you able to pull that up? Because we did have something a couple months back having to do with a contract for false alarm billing and tracking. And just trying to get an idea of how that's different from this or an extension of this. I don't think the other one specifically outlines City of Brookhaven. Is this only for City of Brookhaven?
No.
Commissioner, I'm going to have to search for that because I don't see anything right now that relates to this particular contract. The last change order we did was this year, but in looking at the history, they actually come back every year asking to change order. It's not a multi-year like some of the other ones. So you see them every year because they only ask for 1 year.
Which makes it a little bit easier for me to ask
Yeah.
because let me see, what's today? I haven't been here 1 year yet. So, yeah, I'd just like to see what the difference in those contracts were.
Okay. I'll look for that now and hope before the meeting is over that I'll have the information for you.
Okay, wonderful. So if it's okay with committee members, can we hold this until later in the agenda? Okay.
Well, I have a question.
Commissioner Davis Johnson.
How much did we earn last year in false alarm billing?
We earned, let's In 2024, I have to get the totals. It's broken down by a per month fee, which I can share with you so you can review. But I'm trying to see how much, 100, 200, several $100,000. Excuse me. I'm trying to
What's
see,
per
so,
month fee?
and this is 21, 22, 23, and 24. It's just broken down per month for each year, but I can get you a total for the entire year of 2024. Thus far in 2025, we're about, total revenue is $269,729.75.
And that's for 2025.
Yes.
So we spending about what we're earning in late fees, in false alarm fees. We got a contract for $200,000, and that's per year.
Yes.
And we're earning about $225,000.
That is, let me clarify, that's from January through August of this year. We haven't got the totals in
January
from
through
September
August,
through
okay.
December. That's just January through August.
August, okay.
We earned, our total revenue was the $269,000. Out of that, $167,000 was shared to the county. And then the company got $89,000 of it, and then the rest was fees. And that's just from January through August of 2025.
Any other questions or comments from committee members? Okay. If you could just hang out with us for a little while longer while we just see what the difference is. The thing that I believe is different is the reference to the city of Brookhaven, but I just want to be certain. But we'll come back to that later in the agenda. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to item 20251653, all commission districts. Change order number 3 to contract 1191296, Motorola radio equipment installation, maintenance, repairs, and removal services for DeKalb County vehicles. This is a sole source for use by police services and public works, sanitation, and other county departments. This contract consists of radio repairs and the installation and removal of equipment in county vehicles with Motorola radios. This request seeks to increase the contract term awarded to Mobile Communications America, Inc., contract term increase only. How you doing, Chief?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yes, so we're just asking to increase the contract term to March 31st, 2026. We're working on a scope of work for the RFP process, and this will allow us that time to complete the RFP process to get a new contract. But in the interim, we would need that additional time to keep the services flowing.
Okay. And I missed that extension deadline. I mean, not deadline, Lord, what the extension is.
Termination.
Is it through March 2026?
Yes, March 31st, 2026.
Okay. Any questions or comments from committee members?
I guess I do have one question.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes. Good afternoon, Chief. So for the RFP that you're working on and this extension through March 31st, 2026, so the goal would be that new RFP would be in place and ready to go before March 31st?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And so I have one other question, follow up on that. When do you start your process for renewal? If you know when your contract expires?
Yes, ma'am. We normally initiate that at least 6 months in advance with purchasing contracts.
So was this contract presented to purchase in 6 months in advance?
No, ma'am. They're still ironing out the scope of work. And it did start several months ago, but we're still waiting to complete the exact scope of work for the RFP.
So 6 months is not enough time to get your RFP out. Because I'm saying, and the reason I ask is not so much your department, but it's just been a lot of extensions beyond the contract. So I would assume that it's something happening there that
Yes,
we
yes.
need to look into.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? All righty, do we have a motion for this item?
Move to approve item 1653.
Do we have a second?
You want to second that one?
Oh, second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, sir. The next item, 202-51659, All Commission Districts, change order number 2 to contract number 1343980, phone interpreter services multi-year contract for use by the Department of Police Services. This contract consists of the provision of interpreting services for the E911 communications staff and police personnel. This request seeks to increase contract term and funds through December 31st, 2026, awarded to Propio LS LLC, amount not to exceed $140,000.
Good afternoon again. This is Propio, which is our language line or language interpreter services that we utilize with any non-English speaking citizen or person passing through our county. The increase or the influx in non-English speaking citizens has grown dramatically. So in order to have the funding within the contract, we're seeking to request additional funds due to that increase of non-English speaking citizens in our county, so that we're able to provide them the same service as we would to an English speaking citizen.
Any questions or comments from committee members? Is this an extension of, and forgive me, I don't remember the name of the programming that we approved earlier this year to build out our E911 system. I know there were a lot of different features, and I thought language was one of them. Is this a part of that or interfaces with that program?
So this is something separate from the program. The new phone system, which is called Apex, it does two-way translation with Spanish-speaking callers. So when someone speaks in Spanish, it translates back in English, back and forth automatically. The other languages, it detects. It does not translate both of them. What it does is tell us which language they're speaking, so that when they do get the language interpreter services on the line, they don't have to figure out what language is in. They can immediately say, hey, they're speaking Burmese or Portuguese or any of the other languages. So it'll tell us which language they're detecting, so that instead of us having to go through the process of trying to figure out what language they're speaking, the system automatically tells us. The only one it's automatic with right now, and it will continue to improve and also have other languages, but because most of our citizens are Spanish speaking, that is the one language right now that does automatic two-way translation.
And once it identifies the language for the agent on the call, then do they go into the system and it does an interpretation, whether it's in text or audio, for them?
Once it goes over to the interpreter, it'll tell us what language is being detected, and that's it.
Oh, it goes to the interpreter?
Yes.
I gotcha. Okay. All righty, if there are no more questions or comments from commissioners, and it looks like there is not, do we have a motion for this item?
Move to approve item 1659.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Okay. So with the exception of 1698, I think we have gotten through all of our contract items, and we're going to come back to that one.
1586 is what we're coming back to.
Oh, Lord, is it? Oh, yes. Okay, 1586, excuse me. Okay. I'd like to jump to our discussion items, and if we can, start with animal shelter operations.
Did we do the previously heard item?
No, ma'am, because we have, we're short on time, and we do have a couple guests here for presentations. I want to get to those. Yeah, okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Thank you for joining us.
Of course. All right, just to add a bit of context, early last year, I believe the administration commissioned a consultant to actually do a review of the animal shelter operations. The Office of Independent Internal Audit came in afterwards, after the vendor was selected, to kind of oversee the process and provide any kind of support as needed to the vendor in terms of access to information. The purpose of my presentation today really is to give an objective overview of what the findings of the consultant, along with the management response, and basically highlighting what our next steps will be in terms of following up with the administration to ensure that the action plans have been implemented. Where there are areas where there's a disconnect between what the consultant said versus what the vendor is saying, then we will have to actually go out and actually verify to say, okay, what is the truth, what is the reality? But for the purposes of today, I'm not simply going over the high-risk areas as requested, exactly as the as the consultant has outlined them, along with the management response. Now, the report is very large, so I have summarized it somewhat, but there are more details within the body of the report itself. So overall, based on our analysis, there are about 7 high-risk observations or findings. And high risk was defined by, potential risk to animal life, staff safety, legal compliance, and financial integrity. One of the first areas that the consultant identified or concerns was the capacity to care issue, and no daily inventory being taken. And again, this is, based on the observations made by the consultant. It says here that Lifeline, in his opinion, Lifeline is not meeting the capacity for care. He highlighted the National Animal Care, that should be Care and Control Association recommendation, which is a minimum of 50 minutes per day for feeding and cleaning each animal. However, he did note that Lifeline's SOP procedures actually outline feeding the animals at least twice a day. In his opinion, there is not enough staff available per shift to administer the feeding and cleaning of all the animals on a twice per day schedule. In addition to that, based on conversations that he had with staff, he determined that the daily inventory of animals is no longer being performed due to time constraints. Now, in terms of the overall recommendation, he's recommending that additional staff be brought on board and that the daily animal inventory is actually conducted. However, based on the management response, their overall disagreement is based on the fact that the actual standards only require 50 minutes per day. So the fact that I think there was one instance over the 4 days that the consultant did his observations. There's only one day that the vendor, Lifeline, was not able to meet feeding the animals twice a day. So the consultant is essentially using Lifeline's SOP as the main criteria as to whether or not they have passed or failed in terms of the capacity to care. So Lifeline's response, or the county's response, is essentially saying that they are meeting the NACA standard of 50 minutes a day. However, the better practice, as outlined in their own SOP, is that it should be, they try to aim for at least twice a day feeding and cleaning for each animal. I believe there's only 1 day out of the 4 that they missed that target. by 6 hours, and management is stating that that was due to a staff absence on that particular day. In terms of the daily inventory, Lifeline is essentially stating that, contradicting the consultant, saying that the animal care management team does conduct a daily animal inventory. So that's an example of something that we, as the audit department, would have to verify, because the consultant is saying that it is not being done. The vendor is saying that, yes, it is being done. So we would have to do additional observations and reviews to determine what the actual reality is on the ground. Are there any questions before I move on to the other? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I do have a question just on this one point. You've stated that someone will have to go back out and double check a disagreement between what the consultant saw and what Frontline is saying. Is that your office?
Yes.
You will be out there double checking?
Yes.
Okay. And then over what time frame? Because I know, looks like the consultant was there for a period of 4 days. So would you do something similar to verify?
Now, our checks would probably be a bit different. We would carefully examine the process that they use. Like, for example, with the daily inventory, it would not just be a snapshot on that day. We'd want to see examples, documentation. If you're talking about an inventory, for example, I'm assuming that there will be documentation over a number of days. So we like to request that documentation in addition to observations on whichever day we make a site visit, but also look at a sample of the inventory records from other days as well.
Understood. Thank you. I yield.
And I do have a question, but this may come up later, regarding the SOPs of whether they were written according to the NACA recommendations or where they came from. Because if they don't align, considering one of the first items that you showed us, that is potentially one of the reasons we may have so many findings.
So, from an audit perspective, there's a difference between strict compliance with a regulation and better practices are, so you can be in compliance with a regulation or be in strict compliance with a particular standard, but it may not necessarily, it is a minimum standard. So I think that for that reason, why the Lifeline's SOP indicated at least twice a day. Their feeding charts that we have examined as well indicate feeding the animals twice a day. But that standard from NACA is simply saying that at a very minimum, it should be at least 15 minutes per day. But a lot of organizations do strive to go above the actual minimum requirements.
Are we able to translate that twice a day feeding into minutes in order to do a comparison, a closer comparison to whether we are meeting the minimum?
We should. I believe that based on the consultant report, and I don't have it with me, the detailed report in front of me currently, but I do believe that he did calculate it per minute per hour, and he was able to determine that there were only basically over a 4-day period that he was there, that they apparently met the 15-minute minimum. His finding was based on the looking at it from twice a day, that there were 2 shifts during the day, and in the second shift there was not enough staff to actually feed all the animals on the second shift. But overall, for the entire day, I believe that each animal met that 15-minute per day requirement.
I gotcha. Commissioner Long-Spears?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and nice to see you, sir. Always appreciate when you are here and
Of course, thank
share
you.
your wisdom with us. So I don't know if this is an appropriate question to ask you, but it's something I have been pondering, is that what is the impact if we only feed them once per day? So I feed my animals morning and evening, but I do know people that only feed their animals 1 time per day.
No, unfortunately, that is a question that
I didn't think you could respond, but I do wanted to get it on record, is that, I think what's important here, and really at the root of this is what is in the best interest of the animals. And if it doesn't have a negative impact of them being fed one time per day, just double the amount of food instead of twice per day. That's just question one. Number two is, I would think when it says OIA follow-up actions, you will verify whether a daily animal inventory is being performed. I have to imagine that's got to be pretty simple. That's just a document that Lifeline can share with you that states that on Monday, December, or Tuesday, December 2nd, whatever the day is, they went through and they inventoried all of the animals, and then they could just provide you, whether electronically or a printed version, if they're using just a good old-fashioned little, what's a little board thing you carry around? Clipboard, yes, I knew a scientist would know that. A clipboard that it's actually happening. So I'm hoping that it sounds like there's some conflict between the consultant and Lifeline would be pretty easy to resolve by documentation.
I believe so as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yield back.
And Commissioner Terry?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Director Campbell, when, just remind us, just back up sort of the whole process. When did the consultant complete their report?
I believe that the report was initially, the draft report was initially completed back in, I think, I don't have the exact date, I believe it was probably October 2024, either October or November 2024.
2024?
Yes. The draft was completed.
Okay.
So,
and
so
when
yes,
did,
so it did require, I believe that they shared it with the administration to
okay, so,
actually,
all right, so I just want to like level set for everyone receiving this information, because we're talking about the consultant's report that did their audit a year ago. Okay, so let's just let that sink in, that we paid someone to do an investigation, an audit. They've had all of these findings that we're already talking about very concerning things from a year ago, and we're just now talking about it right now. So this was completed in October of last year. Zach, when did the administration and Lifeline provide their response? Was it the summer? Was it June, I think?
I don't have the exact, do you recall the exact date? What I can say is that the consultant report, his work stopped is basically at the point of his findings. One of the responsibilities that we had was to go back to the administration and to ask, okay, what is the action plan that you guys will put in place to address these issues? That took a couple weeks, if not months, for them to come back with that response. But
Well,
yeah, I can't recall it.
I just would like just to reflect for the record that if we've been basically sitting on this for a year. There's been some back and forth about I disagree with this and this is what we did. Let's hopefully just come out of this process with some action items, because I'm tired of getting emails from constituents complaining about things at the shelter, and then our response is, oh, we're doing an audit. Well, we've taken a year to do this audit, and now we're just now going through the recommendations. So let's not sit on them. Let's actually propose policy changes or actions so that we can address the issues. Because if animals aren't getting checked on 15 minutes a day, and we've known that for a year, presumably someone's doing something about it. But if not, that's a real failure on everyone's part involved.
All right, so that is part of the exercise. One of the things that we did was to ensure that the administration actually provided a concrete action plan and timelines. So we are currently in the process of verifying that information. So we have requested the follow-up. There are certain things that were provided last week that we're still going through to verify, but for this particular risk in terms of the feeding, there is no action plan because of the position of the vendor, in the sense that they believe that they are already meeting the minimum requirements. So in this case, no action plan was defined by the administration, and that they have met the NAC of 15-minute minimum requirement, and in most cases, they are meeting the twice-a-day feeding as well, except in one instance during the time of the visit of the vendor, where the vendor himself identified that over the 4-day period, they met the twice-a-day feeding, except for one day, They missed. There was a shortage of about 6 hours that the vendor claims was due to a staff being absent on that particular day.
And I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves because we're like 2 pages in. And so we started the conversation late summer when the request was made to hear the outcomes of the audit. It was delayed because of several issues regarding public safety. We didn't want to do any presentations around the time of the passing of whether it was Officer Rose or firefighter Font. So we delayed some of this, but the conversations were had several months ago with the purpose of coming up with a strategy forward. So I want to make sure we hear everything before we get the conclusion, which I think you've said already regarding what the recommendations will be moving forward. So I may hold questions because y'all are ruining the end of the story for us, but okay, let's just go through some more slides so we can hear what the findings are.
All right. Thank you. So the other high-risk areas that the consultant concluded that the interior facility was largely inadequate, and there were some sanitation issues. By that, he gave examples of cramped spaces, double-stacked cages, high noise level, poor lighting in public areas, floor drainage issues with water pooling, that he believes the floor needs to be resloped, HVAC issues with filthy ceiling grills, HVAC grills and filters, and he observed staff stepping in and spreading animal waste as they walked around. I want to point out as well that for copyright issues, we did not use the images from the report, but the consultant did include photographs of most of the findings that he has detailed. These images are all AI generated, so they're not images from the actual shelter. The actual report itself does contain images from the shelter as well. So in terms of course, I won't go into too much details as to why that is a high risk. I think that is self-evident. But the overall recommendation was to redesign using the unsuitable housing, reslope the floors to fix the drainage issue, enhance the HVAC maintenance, improve the lighting, and fundamentally improve the sanitation practices. Now, management agreed with this observation, and so far, Lifeline has taken over responsibility of the cleaning contract, where they now directly manage the vendor who is responsible for cleaning. They have also retrained the staff, giving them additional training on disease control and sanitation. And again, we have, they're in the process of revising the animal care SOP as well, which, based on the timeline that was provided, should be completed by January 2026. In terms of the drainage issue, work has begun. Again, this is something that we will have to verify, but we have been told that there's additional improvements that need to be completed, structural improvements. It does require the resloping of the floor itself to be completed by February 2026. The other overall facility improvements they are waiting, according to management, they are waiting on the overflow units, some additional units to be operational, and other interior improvements to be fully completed by January, and the lighting in particular to be done by February 2026. Currently, there are no plans to address the noise issue, as stated by the vendor, that the Department of Agriculture staff verbally confirmed that there is no issue with the noise levels. Now, again, these are areas that we would have to, obviously when those dates arrive, those completion timelines have arrived in January and February, those are areas that we would have to go out and actually verify as well. Are there any questions?
Only if you're not jumping ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner Long-Spears.
Thank you, Commissioner Bolton. So for high risk number 2, it was a conversation that we had this morning regarding the 7.5 million that was set aside for SPLOST 2. And my understanding from Mr. Kingsbury is that well over 60% of those funds have been spent already on overflow. I just want to point out to the administration that this high-risk number 2 item can be addressed with additional funding to resolve some of these challenges. And then a question I have for, I believe you, sir, Director, you might be able to answer this, is the sloping, looks like the sloping improvement that Lifeline has stated that will be complete by February 2026. Is funding already there for that, or is there additional funding needed for that to occur?
So there would need to be an allocation of additional funds. There's not a pot, to my knowledge, that is sitting, waiting for that. So whether it comes from remaining funds that are in SPLOST or a CIP, it would require a separate allocation, I believe.
Okay, so that's roughly 12 weeks away. Will that be coming in front of us sooner than later so that they can actually achieve their deadline of February 2026?
Yes, it will.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Okay, and thank you for that question, because one of the reasons we wanted to go ahead and make sure that we went through these items, because there were several requests for the animal shelter, but without going through these line items, I wanted to be sure we were addressing the needs and not the wants. So I'm glad we're able to have all of these conversations around the same time. Are there any other questions before we move on? All right, thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Our number 3, the consultant recommended that a forensic audit be conducted. This was based on his observation that Lifeline operates 3 parallel operations in DeKalb County and Fulton, as well as its own private center, and of course, transfers animals between DeKalb County and the other animal shelters as well, such as Lifeline Community Adoption Center. So what the consultant identified was not a specific observation. What he's actually saying is that because of the various intertwined operations, the risk exists, and the risk is probably higher than it normally would in other circumstances if this was the only operation that the vendor had within the area. But given all the other overlapping operations, he believes that the risk is higher than average. So the recommendation is that the county conducts a forensic audit to examine for commingling of funds and review animal transport accounting. Now, the management response is that the management disagreed, and the main argument here is that Lifeline's contract with DeKalb County is a fee-for-service contract, and Lifeline does not hold or manage any funds belonging to DeKalb County. The organization is simply compensated for providing a service, as is the case with Fulton County. So based on that, Lifeline disagreed with the finding. Now, from OI's perspective, that it is possible. There are things to possibly look at. One of the things that we would have to do is to actually do our own initial risk assessment and to determine exactly what the risk level is. But it is, there are possible angles and things to actually look at here without going into too much detail at this point. But one of the starting points for us would be to do our own risk assessment, to probably look at their financial statements, look at eventually look at the contract itself, to ensure that essentially one of the things that you'd want to look at is to ensure that the county is getting what we have actually paid for. That whatever expenses the county is actually paying for, we are actually receiving the benefit for it, and that you don't have a situation where some of the benefit is allocated somewhere else. But again, that would be a routine contract compliance audit where we basically try to assess whether or not the county is actually receiving benefit for the expenditure.
So looking at the full report of the auditor, did they indicate that there were documents or something that showed the risk, or it's just based on the understanding that Lifeline operates multiple different, operates in Fulton, DeKalb, and then has their own center? Because it sounds like it's more of a drawdown or a billing of services per se, as opposed to giving all the money up front and allowing them to use it as they see fit.
So to answer your first question, no, there was no specific document or smoking gun that was identified by the consultant. His concern was based on the environment and the fact that there are multiple operations that Lifeline is actually involved in, and the transport of animals between those operations.
Okay. I think I saw, Commissioner Patrick, you have a question? No.
All right. When it comes to this item, is there an alternative way to ensure, from the auditor's perspective going forward, there's nothing to be concerned with? I mean, would that mean hiring another finance person within either the county or within Lifeline to assure that the funds are being tracked appropriately versus going into a forensic audit, which I know the management disagreed with that notion?
Well, one of the roles that my department would actually play is conducting an initial risk assessment to verify the information for ourselves, and if necessary from that point, actually do an in-depth audit of the contract and all the supporting documentations as well, to actually see, to determine whether or not the county is actually receiving benefit for the expenditure. Mm-hmm. So that is definitely something that we are considering and something that we will do as part of the follow-up actions to do that initial risk assessment ourselves.
Okay. Are there any other contracts that the county has that are similar to the Lifeline contract? And if there are there any constructs within those contracts that speak to this issue already, to your knowledge?
I mean, to be honest with you, technically speaking, that is the case with most contracts. That, when you talk about a fee-for-service contract, if the vendor is supposed to be providing a particular service, the question then is, okay, even though the vendor is in the business of making a profit, the question becomes, if we paid $1 million to resurface a road, for example, and we were told that that would have involved 10 tons of asphalt, for example, and you were to do an audit and realize that, okay, we paid the $1 million to the vendor that the vendor requested, but they actually only used half a ton of asphalt. That would be a prime example of where the even though we paid for the for 1 ton of asphalt, mm-hmm. we did not actually receive the full benefit of it.
Gotcha.
So it is a concept that is applicable to just about any fee-for-service contract.
Okay. I'm looking forward to your response when you're ready on how we address that, because that is a great way you've just described that. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Davis Johnson.
Thank you. Was there any proof of any misappropriation from Lifeline?
No, so the vendor did not offer any concrete documents or any smoking gun or any specific instance that he observed. He simply recommended it based on the circumstances, the risk environment, and said that, suggested or recommended that this is something that we'd probably want to look at a bit closer.
Oh, okay. So it was nothing just on the top
No.
that would indicate that there was any wrongdoing?
No, there wasn't.
Okay.
Commissioner Long Spears.
Thank you very much, and I'll be brief because I'll comment on all of them. So, sir, to get to the root of the concern, it sounds to me like the consultant is afraid, and I'll give an example. if we have an animal, say, from Fulton County, and then we transfer that animal to DeKalb County, but it wasn't initially a Fulton dog, but it ends up becoming a DeKalb dog, even though it came to us via Fulton County, is that the funding that we have provided to Lifeline is being expended on an animal that's not from DeKalb County. Is that part of the concern?
Theoretically, yes. That is correct.
And then something that does, and I get that, I really do, but something that does concern me, where I think it could possibly be an unintended consequence, is that, and I don't know this is for sure, I know the Lifeline Executive Director is here, but I have to imagine that when our shelter has become really overpopulated, that they may take animals, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rebecca, but I'm just thinking logically, from our shelter over to their center, the 501c3 nonprofit center. So I feel like this is a little bit of a slippery slope here, because they're doing us a favor by taking a DeKalb animal into their shelter to house that animal or to provide medical or dental services, et cetera. And then my last point is, you stated, so here, OIIA follow-up actions, that you would provide your own risk assessment. So are you suggesting that you provide this risk assessment to determine if it is highly recommended that the county conduct a forensic audit, or doing both of them simultaneously?
So, based on the results of the risk assessment, then we'll determine exactly what step is next.
If that forensic audit is needed.
To be honest with you, I mean, from an accounting perspective, the term forensic audit means something different for us than how the consultant has used it. Usually there's a forensic audit when you have a specific allegation and you're trying to prove, did it happen or did it not happen? But I do understand what he's getting at, to the point that you raised earlier. So we will be conducting our own risk assessment to determine at the core of it whether or not the county is actually receiving the benefit of the expenditure itself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like the county probably receives an excess because they're helping us. Anyways, yield back. Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Johnson, did you have something? No. Commissioner Terry?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Director Campbell, in the vendor's report, they say that there's a lack, that it says SOPs lack guidance for handling money or financial accountability, raising risk of errors or misuse. Is that one of the reasons why the forensic audit was recommended?
No, that was not one of the reasons why the vendor highlighted that. However, it is from a broad control environment perspective. Of course, that would be something that we would consider as well.
Okay.
In terms of the policies and procedures that do exist related to that. But that is a point that I'll get to later on in the presentation, because the vendor does insist that they do have those policies in place.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah, and that the consultant was.
Now, the vendor also, it looks like it said the cost per animal is $786.54, which exceeds the national average by 31%. So is that a rationale for doing additional auditing, maybe not as it relates to commingling, but just the service that we're getting? Because what would be the reason that DeKalb and this system would cost 31% above the national average?
Correct. So that is something that we would consider. Look at, for example, do our own analysis, in the sense that I do know that there are different factors that different shelters do consider. Like, for example, my expectation, without going too much into detail at this point in time, it would be that the shelters that have a no-kill operation, for example, would have a higher cost per animal than shelters that do not. So it would be interesting to see exactly what was the methodology that the consultant actually utilized in coming up with that particular metric. But that is something that we would definitely be looking at to see exactly how the costs are determined. And of course, our audits will be a bit more, in a lot more detail. We'll actually be looking at the actual expenses, invoices, to determine exactly what are the actual costs that are actually being billed to the county. Are we receiving the benefits from it? So definitely we will be looking at a lot more records and a lot more details.
Okay, and I do want to say we have gone over time. I know Commissioner Davis Johnson has one more question, but Shannon, if we could prepare to just have them back to finish the presentation, because we're only on page like 6 of 17, and I don't want to rush through it. So, yeah, I would love to bring you back to finish the presentation, but Commissioner Davis Johnson, you wanted to ask your question?
Last question, how do you, I guess the consultant determine risk, if it's high or low? And so my question is, with the forensic audit recommendation is labeled a high risk, but there's no documentation or information as to why it would be a high risk, except for their perception of maybe a dog being transported to Fulton or the cab and should be. So how does that fit into a category of high risk, and what are they using to determine high risk as opposed to low risk?
So that is an excellent question. So when we talk about risk, we are essentially looking at things that could happen. There are certain factors that increase the likelihood of it to happen, and if it were to happen, the impact would be great. I believe the consultant is simply stating that because you have a situation where Lifeline is involved in 3 entities, DeKalb, Fulton, and their own private operations, all within the close vicinity of each other, that itself raises the risk profile. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is happening, but it is definitely at a higher risk than, let's say, the only operation was DeKalb County. And the fact that animals are transferred back and forth, that again is another factor that would increase the risk profile from making it a bit higher than being lower, a lower level of risk.
Okay.
Yes, so it simply points to what might be possible, not necessarily what is occurring at this particular point in time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Like,
Go ahead.
like we know that we lack space for additional, that's something that we see. And then you have something that may happen because of the circumstance.
That is correct.
Okay, I got you.
All right.
Okay,
Should I
so,
continue?
no, we're going to have you come back because obviously there's a lot of questions surrounding what was found. So we do want to have you come back. I don't want to rush through it, and we've already gone over time. So thank you. We appreciate you for joining us today. Unfortunately, we will not be able to get to the pension discussion if that's what you came for. And just for record, we will have to hold items 1513, 1233, 1107, and 0390 in committee.
Did you want to see if we can revisit 1586, though?
Oh, for 1586.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Were you able to find that other agenda item from earlier this year?
Yeah, the earlier agenda item was from January, and that was an item that was submitted to actually allow their contract to stay alive for this year, which is why it was seen in January. I mentioned this earlier today, but it's a cooperative agreement that they're using. They're using, I forgot the name of the city, but they're using someone else's contract. So they've been coming back every year instead of doing a multi-year. They've just been coming back every year to ask, can we keep doing this? So you saw it, well, you may not have seen it in January, but the other commissioners saw it in January because that is when it actually made it to the agenda. And that's also why it asked for a request to ratify previously agreed upon contract term increase to make sure that they still had the ability to use it. So you're seeing 2 in the same year because they're continuing to try to keep their contract alive for the continued usage. We'll have a discussion about multi-year, but that would mean you wouldn't see it every year, though.
Okay, understood. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. So with that understanding, do we have a motion for that item?
Yes, I move to approve item 1586.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.